Okay, get ready for some heart-pounding television with Discovery's new original Canadian series, Disasters at Sea.
We're gonna lose her!
What's going on?
Find the ship!
By that time, it's too late.
The series takes a deep dive, pun intended, into some of the most mysterious and devastating marine disasters of the last 50 years. Joining us to talk about these gripping stories is the program's marine expert, Chris Hearn. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks very much. Good to be aboard.
So I'm terrified of water, so this was horrible to watch, but it's so gripping because you guys really dive into these mysteries that have plagued the industry. Some of the real-life disasters in the show, can you share some of the ones you explored?
So the premiere is around the Derbyshire, which was a large ship that sank in the middle of a storm. And it's an interesting story because the families didn't believe what the inquiry reported, that the ship was lost due to weather. And they mounted their own expedition to find the ship. And needle in a haystack situation, they actually found it. It's an incredible story. And then you have other ships like the Explorer that was lost down the South Polar Seas. The Rocknes, it was a ship that capsized on her way out of a Norwegian port. There's all kinds of these really interesting stories that, put a face to what is often an abstract thought, these ships at sea. But there's people on board, and they have a very interesting life, and they deal with some extreme situations.
Every episode is kind of like watching a movie because it feels that intense. And I imagine there was a lot of work that goes into making these scenarios look so real life for the viewer, because a lot of them are reenactments.
They are, and this is what really drew me into the program, is that I think the team did such a great job of not sensationalizing these stories. They're trying to make them about the real story, the people and the ship and the families and the investigators. So as you can imagine, these are pretty complex stories, and trying to dive into the technical detail requires you to set up a set and to be able to show what people are experiencing. And they did a really good job they produced their own set, they have their own bridge that moves, and they had people in tanks, and they built their own engine control room so they could show the clips of people as they were trying to act on board, what they were trying to do. And that's where I kind of come in. As someone who was a captain on a ship and has been in the industry, I help the writers understand a lot of the technical content, but also to put a human face to help people understand what things actually meant.
You undersold yourself a little bit there because you are a master mariner. You have more than 15 years of experience at sea. Have you ever run into some scary situations when you've been out on the water?
Yeah, it kind of goes with the job. I don't want to make light of it. I mean, there are people who deal with extreme things. I've been in some situations that, yes, were very stressful. We've had fires on board, or we've had problems with water coming on board, and we don't know where it's coming from, and we have to try and solve that. So over a period of time, yes, I've dealt with a few things.
Chris, your time on the show, have you dealt with any of the scenarios where you think, oh, there are lessons to be learned from here that can be applied to people who are on sea today?
Always. That's the thing about the industry, the shipping industry. It tries to be as proactive as it can. It tries to come up with new technology and better ways of doing things. But sometimes it's the result of an accident. And a lot of ship accidents, they do have an effect in terms of improvement of design, improvement in safety equipment that's on board, improvement in training and competency assessment and assurance. So it's a terrible thing when it happens, but sometimes, in a silver lining, there are good things that come out of that. Legislation gets changed. The design of a ship gets changed. They learn things that they didn't know before, because these things work for long periods of time in an extreme environment, and, it's rough on them and the people on board, so.
Chris, thank you so much for coming in. We appreciate your perspective.
Thanks very much.
Okay, this will have you sitting on the edge of your seat. The series premiere for Disasters at Sea is tomorrow night. It's at 10 p.m. Eastern on Discovery. Go to ctv.ca for local listings.